Well, it's a question everyone's asking, especially after the closure of schools across the country. What next regarding the teachers' strike? In studio, we have Principal Secretary in the National Treasury, Dr. Kamau Thugge, and he'll unpack some of the numbers that, of course, have been put on the table. Thank you so much for joining us on The Big Question. The government is saying that in order to make the 50 to 60% payout, it will require an extra 118 billion shillings. Kenya National Union of Teachers says this is an exaggeration, but what are the facts?
Janet, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to come and clarify some of these issues. I want to emphasize that the problem is a public sector wage problem. It is not necessarily a teacher's problem, but it is a public sector wage problem. Because right now, the wages in the civil service have been harmonized. So to the extent that you increase salaries for one category of civil servants, you must increase it for the others. Now, currently, we have a wage bill of about 600 billion. We collect revenues of slightly over about 1.1 trillion, which means that we are spending 50% of our revenues on salaries. Now, if you look at middle-income countries at our level that are doing well, they spend about 35% of their revenues on salaries. So we should be moving from the 52 that we are now to the 35. Now, if we have this salary increase, it is going to, because it has to be, the civil servants have to be increased, the police, the prisons,
across
everybody, across the board. So that that is what we are estimating to be about 118 billion. That 118 billion includes about 15 billion of pensions. Nobody's talking about pensions because pensions must be included. So with that 118 billion, that is why we were saying, in order now to finance that, because it has to be this year, that 118 billion includes the arrears from 12-13, 13-14, and for this year. This year alone, we are estimating to be about close to 50 billion, including the arrears. That's what we've said. If we have to even have a supplementary budget to fund 118 billion, the only way we can do that is by raising the VAT from 16% to 22%. That is the only way we can do it.
Okay, based on the numbers, sorry, just because of time, and I know we need to get through a lot, what then can the government afford? Is there a number that can be put on the table?
I think at the moment...
just to start the negotiations.
Yeah, I think obviously that is something that the SRC would have to decide, because obviously, I mean, that's their function, that's their constitutional mandate. What I can tell you is that already the wage bill is too high. What we should be looking to do is actually to lower it, not to increase it. Because the impact is either you have to reduce your development expenditures, you have to reduce spending on energy, on roads, and all the other things, on infrastructure. And that has an impact on growth. And the moment you slow down the economy, what you have is businesses shutting down, unemployment increasing, and poverty increasing. And that is the concern that we have at the Treasury, that already we're not spending enough on infrastructure, and that if we go in this direction, we'll spend even less on infrastructure, and we will not be able to achieve the Vision 2030 objectives of growth and poverty reduction that we have.
And now, the Kenya National Union of Teachers has also put the Treasury on the spot, and their claim is that Eunice led the president into giving the figures that he did during his address to the nation in terms of teachers taking home 23,000 shillings when it's the teachers paid in Group G get 16,000 shillings. So what is the position around those claims?
But the position, as I know it, and that's the position from the Teacher Service Commission as well as the SRC, is that what the president referred to was the gross takeaway, gross salary, which includes some of the allowances. It is true that the basic salary is about 16,000, but there is also a housing allowance of 3,000, and there's a commuter allowance of 4,000. When you add all those, you actually now come to the 23, and that is what the president referred to.
Okay, that's what he referred to. I want to go back to the question that I asked you about, and you talked about the SRC making that decision. First of all, is it not a fact that the TSC, the SRC, and even Treasury are the ones who sort of agreed on the 50 to 60% payout, because that's what teachers had been demanding? So now it sounds like you're kind of backtracking on that word for something that was already agreed upon, which is creating a lot of this mistrust and back and forth. What are your comments on that?
The Treasury, we have never agreed to that figure. We always knew that we already have an unsustainable wage bill as it is now. Our target is actually to reduce it significantly. Right now, the wage to GDP ratio is about 10%. Our target and all the plans that we have for the medium term is to reduce it to 5%. We don't reduce it to 5% by increasing salaries. It is true that one of the things that we have to do is have policies in place to grow the economy, and that way you are actually now reducing the wage bill to GDP. So our position in the Treasury has always been that we are already paying too much in salaries. You may recall, I think it was a year or 2 years ago, when in fact we had a retreat in Naivasha, where we all agreed in the executive to reduce our salaries by 10%. So our position has always been that wages are too high. Let us reduce them. Let us create space for infrastructure. Let us get the economy growing. Let's get employment going and reduce poverty. All
right, we have to wind up, but you know, the anxiety is so palpable in the country right now from, you know, parents, students. We just saw the story of students not really knowing what to do. Is there absolutely anything that government can do? Any kind of you know, money or amount of money or somewhere that can be put on the table at least to begin the process of negotiations, get the systems back in place, get the kids back in school? Is there anything that can be done at this stage?
You know, Jad, as you know, the case is in court, so and I think there are going to be decisions made about that. I think my point in coming here was really to explain the current situation that we are in, and that we shouldn't make it worse, because if we make it worse as a country, we are going to suffer, and the country will not grow as much as we would like. I think that is the point.
Okay, all right. We'll keep following. But thank you all the same for coming and explaining some of those points for us. Principal Secretary in the National Treasury, Dr. Kamau Thugge.